pen made mightier without wood.
Welcome to Pen Made Mightier. I'm Gideon Ray. Have you ever stared at a painting and just wondered for just a second what it might actually mean? The full depth of emotion that you could extrapolate from a still image? I think we all have at least once in our lives. But we don't see that used a lot when it comes to visual medium that's in constant motion. The still image becomes something that's too slow, but it doesn't have to be. In a single image, you can say a lot. In fact, you can tell an entire story, and I've seen no better example of this than in The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, a movie that came out not too long ago. If you haven't seen The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, that's fine, because I think you can tell everything you need to tell about this character from the first 5 seconds of the film, because it opens in such a unique way. It opens with him opening his checkbook. The first shot of the movie is Walter sitting down at his kitchen table, opening his checkbook, and adding in a new amount to the list. But in the previous items, you can tell a lot about who he is as a person. I think if we break it down line by line, we can learn a lot about Walter before the movie ever even starts. There are 5 items in Walter's checkbook, and each one tells us something more about the person who keeps this little book. The first one is item number 1972. It's a deposit for his mother's new home in a retirement community. This says Walter's father is probably out of the picture entirely, either through divorce or possibly demise, or maybe he was never there to begin with. For whatever reason, Walter's dad is not a part of this equation. We can tell this because it's about his mother's new apartment. Not his parents' new apartment, just his mom alone. This also shows us that he lacks the personal resources to take care of his mother the way many of us would like to hope that we can do when they get to that stage in their life. It's not some small amount either, so we can also kind of guess that he's probably not a bad son. He's trying legitimately to get his mom into someplace nice. Be this because of maybe a sense of obligation, or because he truly loves her. That's open to interpretation at this point in the movie, but I think many of us would lean, well, actually I'm curious, what way do you lean? The next item, 1973, is a subscription to eHarmony. This shows us that Walter doesn't have a girlfriend, and that he's looking for romance but hasn't found it yet. It's also important to note that this is the only personal purchase we see in Walter's book. Everything else is for somebody else. I think this shows us that he's frugal when it comes to himself, but very giving when it comes to others. He's willing to go above and beyond, as long as it means helping somebody else out. And the rest of the movie definitely reinforces that Walter never gives himself enough credit, but will do anything as long as it's to help somebody else. It's one of his virtues, and at the same time, one of his downfalls. It's pretty unique. Item number 1974, the third item in the list, is taking care of someone named Odessa's jury duty skipping fine. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't pay for any of my friends to skip out on jury duty and then let me foot the bill. So this is probably a family member, especially since we know that he's not romantically involved with anybody. Because of that, my guess was that this was his sister, and a few minutes into the movie, we are proven correct.
Odessa, what are you doing here?
Mom made you your favorite clementine cake.
It also shows us that whoever this Odessa person is, spoilers, it's his sister. They skipped out on their own jury duty, and then they skipped out on paying the fines, so they're probably not a very reliable person to begin with. So if Odessa is his sibling, that means it further reinforces the fact that Walter is the one left to bear the weight of his mother's expenses moving into her retirement facility, and Odessa isn't helping out with that, obviously. Item 1975 is where the story starts to get a little bit tricky. It's piano storage. Just piano storage. I mean, we know someone is moving, so storing an item isn't that strange, but to pay such a large amount just to store a piano, it shows a degree of dedication. When it comes to large pieces of furniture, storing them for any sort of extended period can become very costly, And unless it's something very precious to you, most people wouldn't go through the extra effort, especially not for a retirement facility. Most elderly people would have trouble playing it because of their hands, or they just wouldn't have the space in the small facilities that retirement communities provide. And yet, the piano stays in storage. At least long enough to charge him a couple $100. This shows that the piano is definitely precious to somebody. And you can definitely pull from that it's probably his mom's, since she's the one moving. It's all the information that we've got. Makes sense. It also shows that she's been in the process of moving for a while, because why on earth would you pay to have a piano stored for a day? You could just live with it in your house for a day, right? It has taken some time, and now the piano is in storage. But for how long? This item is also written in blue, meaning that it's the one that stands out to you. All the other items are in black, but not 1975. Piano storage is in bright blue ink, right there at the middle of the page. They want you to see that. They want you to pay attention to it. They want it locked into your mind that Walter has a piano in storage. As a small tangential point, 1975 is a pretty specific number. 1975 pretty much reads as a year, no matter who you are. And even if I saw it in my checkbook, I think I'd still read it as a year before I read it as a check number. So, if you think about that and let your mind do a little bit of work, a man taking care of his aging mother, 1975, could this perhaps be his age? That would make him in his mid to late 30s when this movie comes out. And guess what? A couple minutes into the movie, we are rewarded with the fact that, yes, Walter is experiencing a birthday, and he's in his mid to late 30s.
What?
Yeah, over the weekend.
Walter, happy birthday! He's 42 years old.
The last item, 1976, is to have the piano moved from storage to his mother's new place. This is important because he has not yet written in the amount. Walter has shown himself to be quite meticulous, always filling in his things as clearly and neatly as he can, down to the last penny, to make sure that everything is always accounted for. And yet this has no deduction yet. Why is that? Well, obviously, because it's just now happening. They want this fresh in your mind as the event that Walter is going through. And it turns out to be a big part of the early scenes of this film, getting this piano moved to his mother's house. They set the stage for so much action with this one snippet. With these 5 items, they tell us a lot about Walter's personality, some maybe about his upbringing. They definitely tell us about his romantic affairs and his personal affairs with his family. They even show what he's willing to spend money on. I mean, the only personal check that we have at all is for eHarmony. There's no fast food, there's no movie tickets, there's no nothing. It shows us that Walter is kind of a non-entity. He doesn't really do a lot. That's pretty rare for a protagonist, and the movie definitely backs this up. They constantly talk about how Walter is, boring. And in fact, the movie is about him discovering himself, so this further emphasizes the importance of this checkbook. The checkbook keeps cropping up throughout the rest of the film, and each time you get to see a little bit more into his life, but never as much as this first scene, which tells you so much about who Walter is as a person. I'd really love to see this in some other media. Primarily, I think this would be fantastic in comic books. So many comic books just use the space of their graphics to sell more shots of people punching or kicking or fighting or lasers or whatever they want to sell. Usually just close-ups of the face at mid-range to sell emotion. But why not do something a little bit deeper? If they show a shot of the checkbook and show you what they're spending on, like the oh-so-classic newspaper shot that we see in every other comic book that gets published these days, they could tell us a lot about what the person finds worthwhile and what the person is doing with their life without having to waste precious panels on dialogue that would just feel truncated and foolish. This is particularly good for any character who remains quiet for long periods of time, introspective characters, characters without a voice, maybe even for silent film. I mean, this one scene takes up just a few short seconds, but if you stare at it, if you analyze, you can tell everything you need to tell. I honestly think that if the camera zoomed in just a little bit, waited just a moment more, they could have told the opening bits of the movie completely silent without ever doing anything, because we would already know what the action is. The stage was already set. I think that's kind of brilliant. What do you guys think? Should we see more pictures told in a single frame? What would you guys like to see it in? Where do you think it would help in modern media? Talk about it in the comments, because I'll be looking for you down there. If you enjoyed the video, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for sticking with me. Bye!